Hey guys, so I'm going to show you really quickly how to make a fibula using copper wire. So you can use 18 gauge copper wire or this 16 gauge, which is a little bit thick and beefy. I'm going to go with the 18 this time. I already made a sketch of my really basic fibula. I want it to have a little swoop down here, and then I'm going to give it a little bit of hammer. I'm probably going to play with the shape a little bit more, but for the most part, this is kind of what I'm going for. Now, I could use a piece of string or just this wire to kind of map it out. So I'm going to follow the line and guesstimate how long I need my wire to be. It's better to have a little bit more than a little bit less. So I'm gonna overestimate. Now from here, I'm going to take my yellow mallet, my plastic mallet, and gently hammer my wire nice and straight. Now, you do want to manipulate it with your fingers as much as I can, but this is really going to take all of the kinks out, and it's not going to flatten your wire. It will slightly work harden it, which is nice, but not as much as the steel hammer. Which is ideal. And so what I'm doing is I'm rolling the wire in between my fingers ever so slowly as I make overlapping blows with my plastic mallet all the way up. And so now I've got this really nice straight wire. I'm going to go back to my sketch. And I'm actually going to start with the back end, and I'm going to file my little pointy end. So I've got my little file here, and I've got a little notch already created here to kind of help hold my wire so it doesn't roll around too much. Now, what your wire, especially at this gauge, is going to want to do is it's going to want to deform. So you just have to be really careful and gentle because it just kind of wants to fall in the direction that you're pushing it with your file. So it did bend a little bit, no big deal. I'm gonna go back to my steel block, and then I'm gonna go through my sandpaper grits. I'm gonna start with 220. And again, it's gonna wanna deform, but it's okay, we'll fix it. And really, I'm only sanding the parts that have been touched by the file, because everything else is actually in, pretty pristine condition. Like, it's a drawn down wire, so it's all nice and polished, so I don't have to worry about it. I'm gonna move to 320, and I'm just rotating this wire in between my fingers as I sand. And I want to make sure that there aren't facets left here from the file. So I'm really trying to be mindful of kind of rounding everything out. When you look at a safety pin, it's nice and round at the end. And then I also want to make sure that I'm not Sometimes you file it so much, or you can sand it so much that it almost the tip falls off. So you just want to be really mindful that that's not happening, and if it does, then you know you kind of have to go back through. So I'm down to 600. On your actual piece, I need you guys to go up to 1,000 grit, but for just the sample, which is, you know, what I'm doing a demo of, 600 is fine. So it's a little bit deformed, no big deal. I'm gonna go back through and I'm gonna hit it. And I'm actually gonna hit it a little bit harder because I do really wanna work hard in it now. Copper is naturally pretty soft, so it really wants to move around. So I'm really going to try to hit it quite a bit. And as you can see, I probably need to hit it well past the coil. So I'm going to hit it about up to there. Guys. And I'm actually going to really, really gently hit it with my steel hammer. Now this is definitely going to leave marks on your copper. I kind of don't mind them sometimes. You don't have to do this step, but I like the effect, and I like that it really hardens my material, my wire. Back to my yellow because it's a little bit warbly, and you can see the light catching because it's slightly faceted. I think it's kind of pretty. Now when you hit it, you want to make sure that if it's bending up this way, holding it and trying to hit it down actually doesn't do much. What you have to do is you have to roll it and have that raised part up. And then when you hit it down, it knocks it down into the steel plate. Okay, so now it's pretty straight. I'm going to go back through. I'm going to mark where we want that curve to start. So I'm going to take my round nose pliers and I'm going to hold it right at that Sharpie mark. And depending on how big I want that coil to be, you know, if it's larger, you want it on the back end. If you want it to be smaller, you want it on the front end. I'm okay with like a normal, moderate sized coil. So I want to make sure that that mark doesn't move. I want it to stay right on top. I'm going to flip it over so that, because the, what's it called? The pliers are tapered, so you want to make sure that, you know, your coils are even sized. So there we go. Right. And then, okay, not bad. I'm actually going to go through and work hard the whole thing. And you can do this before forming it. I think I just got really excited. Now, the thicker the wire, the less prone it is to getting deformed. So the 16 gauge, you're not going to have to work as hard. 14 gauge, even less. And the bronze wire that you guys got for your final project, if you want to go that route, is 8 gauge. So it's really beefy. You still have to work hard in it, but not nearly as much as I am with this guy. So I'm gonna say that's pretty good. And I'm gonna go back to my drawing and just follow it. So I've got my flat nose plier. I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna mark it. You can also just use a Sharpie, as long as you know that you have to remove all of that stuff. And then at the black mark, I'm going to take it and I'm going to curve it or bend it. And then you can take your round nose, or you can take a nice round dowel and then form that really soft swoop on it. Right? Make sure that's nice and straight. Hold it there and push it down. Getting there. So then there's kind of a curved back, and I want to accentuate that a little bit more, so oops. Open it up. Kind of run your hand over it to get a softer curve. And especially for your sample, it does not need to be anywhere close to your drawing, which mine currently is not. It's just kind of, it's a good way to give you a general form. Yeah, okay, I'm okay with that. So I'm gonna go through, I'm actually gonna just take my pliers and I'm gonna grab it right here. I'm gonna bend it, which is where it is bent, like so. And then I'm gonna take my round nose. I'm going to bend it down. And that is it. Look at that. Now, the shorter this part is, the more it could handle. Right now, because it's so long, it's a lot weaker because it's so thin. But if the wire were a little bit thicker, you know, all of those factor in. I'm going to smush it down a little bit because we do not need for it to be so wide. I'm going to clip it. And I'm going to now file it. Make sure everything's out of the way. Make sure you don't poke yourself. File it flush. I'm gonna grab my 400 grit. So that should do it. Nothing too crazy. Again, please be careful. So that thing is pointed right at you and it's sharp. Okay, and then I'm okay with compressing it a little bit more. I want it to be tight. Ta-da! So that's technically a little spring, right? And then I'm actually gonna hammer this little doozy. So I like the idea of the undulating wire. Now, you can kind of see how it doesn't lay flat. We're gonna fix that. And you just need to make sure not to place your entire piece on the steel, because then you're gonna flatten elements that you do not want flat. I can also flip it this way, but this is technically the back because of the way the hook is, and I want to be hammering the front. So I'm gonna do a little bit of light hammering just to flatten it, and then I'm gonna flip it back over and then hang the volume parts off the steel block. I'm going to pick and choose how much pressure to apply, because I don't want it to be all one thickness. I want parts of it to be more thick than others. Now at this wire gauge, I'm not trying to thin it out so much because the structural integrity will be lost. That needs to be tweaked a little bit, because this looks like it was a little bit bent, super normal. And then that I'm going to open back up. And there's my little fibula. So we've got little hammer marks on there. Thicker here, thinner here. We've got our little spring coil and we've got our catch. This is the back. And then, you know, in theory, that's just my decoration, but you could do other things. You could put coils on them. You could put, you can twist them. You can add things onto it like jump rings or sewing a panel on, or maybe this is a U shape. There are so many things that you can do for this fibula.